Oh, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for giving me your time today. I understand it's very precious. I want to get the most out of it for you. I've worked in the security industry now for over 20 years, and I think it's really important to try and reflect that actually what we're right at the beginning of right now is a new data age. Yeah? We're actually seeing the role of information fundamentally change the way that we act, behave, have work, play, and everything. And what we're seeing is a change in the way that we need to secure and prevent others accessing that information, because it means so much more to us going forward. Now, most of my time in my career, I've always had a conversation with a customer really about trying to prevent them from getting hacked, what it is that's going to stop them from getting hurt, and what basically preventing them from getting hurt online today. And it fundamentally comes down to the role of data and how they're using it. Most conversations I have with customers really are essentially around the role of data inside their business, what it does for them, the type of information they have, and the protection that's required through its life cycle. Data has a different value, of course, at each stage of its life cycle in an organization. And most of the conversations I have are trying to figure out what that life cycle is and what security we apply to it. A good example is the BMW 3 Series that's in development right now, and you can see that the manufacturer here has gone to great efforts to make sure that nobody can see and understand what it's going to look like when it finally gets launched. It has an immense value to that manufacturer. But of course, the moment that they've released it to the market, they want everybody to know what it looks like. So there's an immediate change in terms of the value associated with that data. All data is the same. Some of it will increase in value later in its life cycle, some of it goes down, and this is just one of those types of examples. The other question I have with organizations is, what type of data are you capturing? And is it necessary for you to capture all of that information about your customers that you do today? A good example is when we join a website, how many of them ask you your date of birth? Do they really need to know the day that you were born? Or what actually matters is how old you are, because they want to market to certain services to you that are going to be applicable. They don't need to know the date of birth, really, do they? So getting that balance right is actually quite tricky for organizations. Anything that they have to invest in terms of security here is a crucial factor on this actual pivot here. Anything that they spend over what's needed is essentially waste. They're wasting potential revenues and money that they could apply elsewhere in protecting their business. But if they don't invest appropriately, then they're actually putting the business at risk. And getting that balance right is really tricky. One of the reasons it's really tricky is because hardly any organization effectively puts a statement out there towards its value of the assets of data they have. What are they worth? And trust me, the cyber attackers that are out there today will assess your organization in that capacity. They'll look at the role of data that they have from you and how they can monetize it. Are they going to hurt your brand? Are they going to hurt your customers? Are they going to hurt your bottom line? Now, what this tends to lead to is an organization that doesn't know where and how to protect itself most efficiently. It doesn't know where the threat's going to come from. So we end up with administrators and security teams running around trying to spin the appropriate place and security all of the time, and running around because there's just never enough resource to do so, and handling managed manual tasks, updating files, log files, looking at patch management systems, rolling out AV updates, and so on. When actually what's happening is they become defocused. That isn't the job that most security people wanted when they started. They wanted to fight the cyber criminal, not manage security solutions. And actually what happens is that leads an organization to be distracted, focusing on the wrong thing and not having their eyes and focus on the right area and objectives for the business. And I say, managing solutions rather than actually improving the security posture of the business. And effectively, the business gets pickpocketed from the bad guys today, and that data's lost. Now, getting the balance right is incredibly difficult because there's another pressure, the business pressure. Business is asking the IT organizations everywhere to help them innovate, to help them bring around technology that's going to bring their customer closer, that's going to enable them to nurture, reach, transact with customers in a much more efficient and optimized way than they do today. Now, irrespective of the ultimate technology that they adopt to do that, they've got the other balancing act to provide there as well, which is protecting the organization through those innovations that they're trying to adopt. Getting that right is crucial. And here, this is a great example of just looking at, or focus point towards looking at the devices that we use. It's not 2000 anymore, but if you look at the endpoint protection solutions that are offered out there in the market today, they're still talking to you about Windows. They're still talking to you about macOS. And actually, the endpoint today is vastly changing underneath our feet. And it's not appropriate to look at protecting the end node and looking at it as just a Wintel box anymore. The mobile computing era was just the start. The way that we use these devices presented other challenges for businesses to look at how and where and when and what with they provide protection to their customers. But soon, everything around us that we use will be connected to the internet. From the clothes that we wear, to the places that we go, the vehicles that take us there, the food that we eat, even potentially, may have something around it that tells me more about you than I maybe need to know. Everything will become connected. I'll make a prediction that we won't be calling devices IoT type devices by 2021, purely because everything will be connected. We don't call an Xbox an electronic toy, for example, anymore. And how is your business capitalizing on that? What is it doing to leverage these types of devices and equipment that's available across the business and across the globe to actually help make your business more efficient, more optimized, the sensors that are coming, the devices that are coming, the feeds that are coming to help you get more out of business? How are you going to capitalize on those data-orientated changes? Protecting that in the way that we do today is a bit like bringing a knife to a gunfight, right? Applying those siloed models of protection that we've grown up with over the last 20 years isn't suitable in the world that we're about to start adopting around us. We need something else. The end node security that we've got today just simply cannot cope. And a great example of that was witnessed by all of us who saw the Mirai botnet based on IoT devices performing denial of service attacks last year. Why did they go after that? Because there's no protection model around it. People don't think about protecting those devices, and so they become vulnerable and able to be used as a cyber attacker's weapon. And remember, this is the first phase of this, the first phase of these types of attacks. They're going to get much worse as we go forwards. And even if you're an organization that's not going to be adopting the industrialized IoT, then you will certainly have your employees at home taking your devices, your data, into those dirty environments that are potentially owned and managed and run by somebody else. And what about if you're a manufacturer? How are you ensuring the integrity of the devices that you're going to be placing in other people's homes so that a hacker cannot access and leverage your infrastructure for their aims? The application model is changing too. We're not just seeing applications on a desktop anymore or even a mobile device. We're actually seeing them being embedded in the things around us all the time. Smart screens, TVs, cars, everything. And the way in which we interact with the data there is really crucial because it's that bridge of the technology that business is looking for to build relationships with customers, to provide that meaningful sense of relationship between data and a vendor and the customer. Now, we all know this as the big data initiative that's happening all around us. I'm sure all of you have heard big data to death. But the real key for me here is how businesses are using it to change that fundamental relationship with the customer. Because the ADOS is, the more you know about your customer, then the better equipped you are to be able to sell them something in the future, or more relevant to them you are. Some of the advantages are pretty obvious in terms of being able to present your customer with opportunities, options, alternatives to products, and so on and so forth. But it's not just about that. It's that application that's driving the way that somebody feels about you as a vendor. So the better you get that, the smarter that becomes, the more insightful that becomes, the better, based around data. Great example is Tesla. So I work with people who have Teslas. I don't. I have an Audi. So let me just be clear where my fandom comes from this straight away. But the people who own Teslas, the way they describe them is it's as though the car knows them. It understands where they're going today based on patterns. It knows where they're going because it integrates with their diary. It knows where they're going because, or likely to stop on the way, because they always stop at the drive-through Starbucks or somewhere else. And here they are on your route. The car is giving much more meaningful information about that journey and where they're going on those journeys than our regular cars do today. And it's that that's creating stickiness with the end user. It's that experience that they're wanting, not the other. And I'll bet that in the future we'll end up in an environment where the customers, you, require an end user data agreement. Because whose data is it anyway? Is it yours? Surely you would want it so that you don't have to retrain the BMW or Audi or Volkswagen or whatever when you want to move to another car brand. You want to be able to take that with you so that it can give you the same experience. But manufacturers won't want that. They're going to protect it. So whose data is it anyway? A great example of some anecdotal insight that's come from automated generated systems around us is Google. I was at a restaurant, the Duck and Waffle in London a couple of weeks ago, and I was just wanting to bring it up to see where it was on my phone. But all of the other anecdotal information that it gives me now is great. But the reason I pop this up on the screen now for you is this, the footfall. So on that given day that I was going, here's how busy the restaurant gets at any one point of time in the day. I'll bet that the insight that they get from a system they don't even own gives them more understanding about the footfall they're going to get than their staff do in the restaurants. The consumption of IT, the model, is totally changing around us, and our IT guys are faced daily with an end user that wants to do things in the way that the end user has been pre-programmed to do it today. I want to have convenience, speed, efficiency, fun even in the way that applications are used. And IT guys have got to adapt or die here in the way that they deliver IT to their end force, because otherwise we all know we end up in the world of shadow IT. But what and how data is being created is fundamentally changing around us as we speak. And what's driving that is intelligence and automation from real-world, real-time, environmental pieces of information around us. Did you know we created more data in the last 2 years than the entire human history before it? It's phenomenal, the explosion of this data and how we're going to be using it going forwards. Whether or not it's for fitness applications, measuring pressure, flow, sensors, temperature. I was at an event where UK rugby fan. We were at the rugby talking to the training teams, like looking after the guys here. They wear suits now that essentially give the coaching staff more insight around the way that the players are acting and behaving and how fit they are and how equipped they are to take on the next 5 minutes than the player themselves. And so they'll pull them off the field before they even start to feel tired. Automation, we've heard automation and how it's the role of actually going to be connecting people together, mesh environments and networks coming together to share information from car to car or device to device. Or whether or not you're looking at facial recognition or manufacturing, that data is changing business. It's changing us. And yet, we still have the same protection model for it, which is a joke. It's based on an industry that's as old as I am. Yeah? It cannot continue in the same way. Just consider ransomware for the moment, a threat that should have been dealt with 20 years ago. Because all it really is a file that comes through your gateway and explodes on a desktop, runs Windows, finds the shares, enumerates them faster than any human can, and then starts to encrypt them. Does anyone have an experience with a user where they've wanted to encrypt their files so quickly across the network? Anyone? No. That behavior should indicate that something isn't normal, and that's the type of model that we should be leveraging. Using untapped information across the network to tell us better insights, give us better information, better suggestions around what could potentially be happening, leveraging machine learning and AI along the way. This is the investment that Juniper Networks is making. The cloud fundamentally is changing too. The way that we're actually going to have to be having trillions, not billions of devices, trillions of devices interacting with the cloud means that the cloud will change too. Much more to an edge-orientated 5G fog model, where latency becomes key into resolving that. So we have to move applications into the edge, into your operators or your cloud providers' networks at the point of connection with your applications, because they'll need it for speed purposes. How are you prepared to protect that? How are you even prepared to protect data today that isn't even on your network, like on Salesforce.com or somewhere else? How are you stopping an infected client that's got a Trojan running on it connecting to Salesforce when the user does? How? CASB and that type of model make more sense here than the historical old models that we're all familiar with. And we all understand this journey to the cloud is a promised land. Yeah, the operational expenditures of that make sense. We all get that today. Anyone who doesn't, please leave the room, right? But we get this. But the challenge in getting there is the hurdles. And the hurdles are trying to use the current models, trying to use what we've learned and how we've built enterprises and businesses over the last 20 years in the cloud. Relatively speaking, a lot of it's incompatible, and we need to change our thought processes around getting there. We have considerable risks to come. Today, when you get attacked, it's an inconvenience mostly, right? Something's gone wrong, someone will get maybe some abuse, some embarrassment around doing it, but it's an inconvenience. Today, that attack is relatively small in terms of how it hurts somebody. But in the future, you're potentially talking about life-threatening problems. Imagine car systems that don't stop. Yeah? Maybe you're using IoT in your home appliances at home, and a piece of ransomware decides that it's not going to turn them off, or turn them all on at 3 a.m. in the morning. The potential here for the bad actors is catastrophic, and we need to think about the security model that we're putting in place to stop those things today. Who's responsible for that? Who takes ownership of that protection? Because today, what's evidential is that nobody does, right? Is it you, the consumer, the manufacturer, the vendor, the cloud provider? Who's taking the relevant responsibility to protect that ecosystem around us? This needs solving, because especially when you look at the new networking topologies and everything that's coming around that, we need a new approach. Juniper's story here and vision is the software-defined secure network approach. So to leverage the automation, leverage the actual flexibility and agility, and the programmable, I'm trying to get my mouth dry again, way of actually using these technologies to embed security into the network that you build, so that you have a secure platform and foundation for which the business is actually built upon. Now, just as a point of reference and a validation of this for you, consider that last year there was 13 pieces of malware written every second. They were there, they looked different, they acted different, they got to the machine differently, that what they did and tried to do was maybe subtly different, all because they wanted to bypass the traditional layers of defense that you've built. But they all needed a network. Why are we not leveraging the network better than we do today? There's a huge opportunity here, and we're not taking advantage of it. And this is what we're actually building with our secure networks strategy. Because you can teach an old dog new tricks here. You can leverage and reach and use technology to find new customers, to nurture them, to build trust with them. But you cannot do that by using the old techniques that we've learned over the last 20 years. It's a new way of working. We need an intelligent, automated, secure network platform for you to build your business on securely. Software-defined secure networks is the approach that Juniper has taken here to enable you to leverage information and intelligence from across the business that provide instructions in an enforcement domain across the entire network. You can take the information from one system and leverage it across the entire routing, switching, and firewall environment that you have, leveraging the network itself as the enforcement point, securing the brand, the business, the customer, and your revenues going forward. Now, I think fundamentally, the way that the threat is changing around us is encompassing on us to actually do something different than the way we've done before, because I actually personally think our future very much will depend on it. Thank you very much for your time.